Is this thing on? You guys know what time it is. It is time for our 150,000 subscriber giveaway. Yeah, I'm giving away 2 Lego Star Destroyers. Yeah, those are the Venators, not the actual Star Destroyer, a Venator Star Destroyer. Yeah, I'm giving away 2 of those things. So make sure you go down below and put your name in the thing. Because, yeah, I also don't have the physical thing with me. I learned the hard way that international shipping costs a lot of money. So I'm going to make sure I give away these 2 Star Destroyers right here. And I want to thank you all so much for your continuous support on the channel. 150,000 is right around the corner. What a journey. What a fucking journey, guys. So I'm really excited. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I got something crazy on it. I hope you like it. That's all I'm going to say. Anyways, I love you all. Spread the love. And I'll see you guys at 150,000 subscribers. Hello. Our story begins on Renvar, with Padawan Anakin Skywalker following his own instructor. At 15 years old, Anakin was growing impatient and tiresome of these continuous cycles. They'd been sent to Renvar per the request of the Grand Master. Yoda had a vision about the rise of a threat on a snow globe far from Coruscant. There were several Jedi investigators going to other locations. Joining Obi-Wan and Anakin was Jedi Master Coleman Trebor. They were simply searching for a Sith holocron that could have the answers to this rising darkness. Jedi didn't typically look for secrets from the Sith, but they were going to destroy the holocron believed to be here or at any other snow planet. Yoda's vision included a holocron with great power and great influence, which is exactly why they sent Anakin there. It sounds stupid, but in their minds they believed that by showing Anakin the true form of the dark side, that he would reject it. Anakin was walking about, kicking ice and looking around with an annoyed expression, and he even looked a little exasperated. He didn't want to be doing another explorative mission to an old relic place. During their trip through hyperspace, Obi-Wan commented on how Anakin was always wanting adventure. This was his chance to get it. But instead of seeing the bright side in any of this, he remained miserable. Anakin wanted to see towns and cities, experience the smells, sights, and excitements of worlds around the galaxy. But here, on Renvar, inside of a desolate cave, there was none of that. Even worse, the Tatooine-born Padawan was frigid in these below-freezing temperatures. At least the cavern protected, mostly from the winds. Anakin watched Coleman and Obi-Wan examine the tomb of a dead Sith. Anakin was somewhat interested, but instead of keeping his eyes on it, he just sauntered around aimlessly. Apparently, this was the resting place of a Sith named Kel Dorma, but to the Padawan that didn't mean anything. The 2 Jedi Masters continued messing around with the actual tomb until they opened it and retrieved the holocron from within it. As they were walking away with it, Obi-Wan holding the holocron wrapped in a cloth, they were stopped. Anakin hadn't been listening to either of them from this conversation, but he soon wished he hadn't. They got closer to the entrance of the cave when a shadow perched above them, looking down at them. Without a hint of hesitation, a crimson lightsaber shot from their robes and slashed down the slight incline towards the Jedi. 3 weapons ignited, but Obi-Wan shoved the holocron into Anakin's stomach and told him to look for the escape and get to the ship. They needed the engines to be warm for their own escape, reminding Anakin of Qui-Gon's stall on Tatooine. He nodded his head, lightsaber still in hand, as Kenobi followed Coleman into a rapid defense. Their sabers echoed through the cavern, bouncing off walls and shattering ice nearby. The sound was thrilling but also terrifying. Anakin watched, almost like a bantha in the headlights. He couldn't piece together what was happening. Trebor and Kenobi were in danger and he couldn't help them, as he could feel his own saber shake in his hand. He gripped his wrist while holding the holocron closer to his chest. Anakin's eyes watched as a hooded, slim man slung his saber at the 2 Jedi. Coleman Trebor yelled out to Anakin to get out of here, seeing that the cave was open to leave. Skywalker slipped but ran up the incline, as the sabers behind him continued to shriek in the thin air. Kenobi used the Force to no avail against his opponent. Tyrannus was ready to kill his grand student. He slung his saber into both Jedi, using electricity to push Coleman backwards and drag his weapon into Obi-Wan's defensive block, trying to kill both of them. As the sound of sabers slowly quieted down the further he got from them, Skywalker sliced through 2 battle droids before leaping into the T6 shuttle and slipping the holocron down onto the co-pilot's seat. He engaged the engines and reared the ship back, turning it so that the ramp could face the cave. But from his position, he could still see the lightsabers. Obi-Wan sliced down, before getting punched in the throat, and he stumbled back, as Coleman Trevor moved in, swinging his emerald lightsaber at the Sith Lord. But his body was cut in half. The Jedi Master remained alive before Dooku shoved his saber into his back. Kenobi held his hand out to the now dead friend. Dooku's face could be seen, revealing his identity. Kenobi pulled Coleman's green lightsaber into his hand and looked at the Sith, who gave him a choice. Without using many words, he asked if Obi-Wan would surrender himself to the dark side, as Qui-Gon would have. Kenobi looked down at the emerald lightsaber, ignited in his hand. He turned towards Dooku, telling him that Qui-Gon would have never joined him. But in his memory, he would extinguish Dooku's life, so that he couldn't bring any more harm to this galaxy or to his dead student. Kenobi didn't know the truth of who Tyrannus really was. He gathered what he could from watching Dooku execute Coleman Trevor, and of course the Crimson Lightsaber. They clashed as a result. Obi-Wan continued fighting over Coleman's dead body. Their weapons increased speed as Kenobi moved back into Form 4, something he had spent every day since Qui-Gon's death moving away from. But with two sabers, he was going to take his chance. They dug at each other. Dooku moved seamlessly to defend himself, but even Kenobi in this rage-filled moment seemed difficult to stop. However, that would not last forever. Obi-Wan would receive a deep cut into his arm before retreating back up the hill. He attempted to use the high ground as a defense, but it did not work. Obi-Wan could see that his life would come to an end, so he kicked snow and ice at Dooku, turning and yelling back to his apprentice to warn them that Dooku was a Sith. The yell barely audible to Anakin, who watched a crimson lightsaber rise out of Obi-Wan's chest. Tyrannus ripped it out and shoved Obi-Wan face first into the snow. Anakin felt terror shriek through his body, watching the life leave Kenobi's face. Dooku reached forward to pull the Jedi ship out of the sky so he could kill another. Anakin grabbed the ship and pulled it forward. He tried to escape the grip, and slowly but surely, it slipped free, blasting Dooku off of his feet and sending him back down into the cave. Skywalker bursted through the atmosphere and then jumped into hyperspace. By the time he reached Coruscant, he was an emotional wreck. His face was puffy, and he had already contacted the Jedi Temple. A team of counselors were going out to Renvar to confront the apparent Sith. No one inside the Order had been in contact with Dooku since his disappearance, so if he was hunting down Jedi, then he needed to die. Yoda and Plo were heading to Sereno, with another bunch of knights following Yarael Poof to Renvar. But there was something else. Due to Anakin's instability, he wasn't able to clearly communicate to Master Windu. He was also a little nervous because he feared that Windu might get mad at him for being an emotional wreck. However, Mace was very understanding and compassionate. He told Anakin to stay the course, he would bring him home. Obi-Wan would be proud of him for communicating so quickly. Windu hoped that Yarael would get there first. The Holocron wasn't even a question at this point, because they had confirmation that another Sith was found looking for what they were searching for. Anakin, unintentionally, would hide the Sith Holocron because he placed it inside of his knapsack. When he landed the ship inside the temple, he was greeted by Master Windu and Shaak Ti. The two Jedi Masters quickly moved to comfort him. Mace planted his hand firmly on Anakin's shoulder and told him he was strong. While Mace sensed the darkness from the Sith Holocron, he believed that it belonged to Anakin's hurt heart. He shot Shaak Ti a look to make sure she sensed the darkness too. She did, but she wrapped her arm around Anakin's shoulder and told the little one to come with her. Mace looked to the ship, feeling like he wasn't catching something, but he wasn't really sure at the moment what it was. As he prepared to say something more to Anakin, he was stopped when his communication device rung. Anakin could see the words sitting on the tip of Mace's mouth, but they were retracted, lost to something that he might never hear. Shaak Ti walked Anakin into the temple, where they would go to her meditation chambers and speak extensively. Sensing the darkness, she would try to quell the rising dark side within Skywalker. No one knew that this didn't come from Anakin himself, but the holocron behind him within his knapsack. This meant that the very tired Anakin would spend hours with Shaak Ti as she tried to coax him down from this dark high. The call that Windu received, on the other hand, would be the first of two. Yarael and his squad hadn't found anything on Renvar. Kenobi and Coleman would be brought back to the core, so that they'd be buried inside the Jedi Temple, where they belonged. As for the second call, Windu would learn of Dooku's demise. Yoda and Plo jumped him when he landed. Tragically, they didn't learn a single thing from their execution, so his connection to Sidious, the clones, and everything else was nothing but a mystery. The Jedi didn't know about Kamino, the plan, the Confederacy, or anything. They merely cut the tail off of the snake. Surely Palpatine would have no problem growing it back. But away from Dooku's death, there was another darkness growing. The Jedi had done in the following days what they could to help Anakin, but he remained relatively secluded. What helped them believe that Anakin was semi-okay was the fact that he displayed less darkness in person. This was in fact a lie, though it did not come from choice. Skywalker and Shakti spent several hours together following his return from Renvar. She then walked him to his quarters so that he might rest. In the morning, the two of them would meditate together again and work on his emotions. She held the code very dear to her heart, and despite her encouragement that he relinquish his emotions, she could not stop them. So, Shakti course corrected, as any good Jedi would. As an almost maternal figure, she was able to gracefully guide Anakin through his grief, which would help her learn that the Order never freed Shmi from slavery. This would eventually be passed on to another, that being Master Voss. Quinlan would learn that Shmi had been bought and freed from slavery, but the story Anakin would hear was that the Jedi freed her, and she was living with someone she became close with, as a moisture farmer. This alleviated him in many ways, but he still was deeply hurt over Obi-Wan's death. At 15, this was a very troubling pain to conquer. Qui-Gon was his initial father figure, but Anakin would sometimes regard Obi-Wan as his father. Here he was, left grieving over someone he never truly had in his life. Skywalker would spend a lot of time with Shakti following his initial landing, and even with another few masters, including Yoda. Though Anakin found more comfort in Shakti because she understood in ways that Yoda struggled to. The worst part is, the Grand Master worked arduously to attempt to speak Anakin's language, but Yoda's Achilles was the fact that he had seen death for centuries, both natural and unnatural. He, due to his species' age, knew that he had to brace for death at some point or another, and he had to conquer it. For Anakin, who wasn't properly instructed by Kenobi, it created a small crevice, metaphorically, between he and the Grand Master. Yoda worked hard, but Shakti, being closer in age to Obi-Wan, was able to accommodate much better. The Council wanted to give Anakin the right instructor, and it seemed that Shakti would be the best fit, but at the current moment she had her own student to instruct. The burden would fall to Depa Billaba, member of the High Council, which Shakti at this point was not. This was a volunteered initiative, partially because it was forbidden for a Jedi to instruct two students at the same time. Unsurprisingly, Depa and Anakin got along almost immediately. They were able to catch up on some very key lessons, and Master Billaba was able to get a firm grip on where Shakti left off. Though what no Jedi inside the temple knew is that Anakin was struggling even more. Despite the help from these instructors, he hadn't been sleeping well. His dreams were filled with nightmarish slaughters, not from his time. He was recounting massacres and genocides from eons past in his dreams. As a student who didn't listen to history, Anakin would have never connected these nightmares to actual events. Skywalker did actually communicate these struggles to Depa, but they couldn't hone in on where these dreams were coming from. So, one night, when Anakin woke up in a cold sweat, he got up. This time was unlike anything he had ever felt before. The surge came deep from within. When his eyes opened from the dream, his ears were filled with Obi-Wan's last words crying out. Anakin paced around his room and peered out of his window. The Council had given the young Padawan a larger room so that he could tinker around with mechanics. Maybe he wasn't the favorite child in the Order, but he certainly got the privileges of the Chosen One. He paced around the corner of his bed and looked out into the cityscape. His first thought was to go and speak to Depa. She assertively told him that he could always wake her from her sleep. He needn't feel bad about doing it. She was here for him, to be a guide and a friend. Anakin truly trusted that, and he truly believed her, but he felt guilt over something that had yet to happen. The thought of disturbing Depa made him unsure. She was a kind and sweet soul, but he tried to man up. Anakin needed to conquer these demons on his own. He was 15, basically a man. This was his fight. This became an echoing thought in his mind as he continued pacing around the room. Though his anxiety did not stop, he started biting his nails, batting his hand into the wall and clenching his fists just to hear them pop. Skywalker breathed heavily, finding incompletion within himself. He looked around and eventually felt something. There was something else lurking within his room. That, in his panic state, he didn't truly notice. It was in all actuality something he completely forgot about. The Council hadn't asked about it because they had to cover up their assassination of the Countess Sereno, not to mention an entire investigation that they were launching into it. Luckily for Sidious, he had cleared out the data before the Jedi could find it, though the Order knew they were closing in on the Sith. 3 Temple Guards and 5 Jedi Masters were slaughtered at Castle Sereno while the investigation was taking place, none of these Masters being counselors. Anakin obviously didn't know this, but he could sense the rising darkness. Their lifeless bodies were a drag on the Force itself, taken from an impure source. Skywalker stopped dead in his tracks when he saw a glowing crimson color rising out of his knapsack, the one he hadn't touched since Renvar. When he got over, in what felt like milliseconds, he pulled it out, feeling the sharp edges across his bare skin. His chest heaved more. He accessorized the artifact that Obi-Wan died for, and thought that he might look into it. Without questioning this decision, he knelt down and slowly opened the holocron. Skywalker believed this might be the holocron of Quel Droma, but instead it belonged to another Sith. Whether Malgus hid it here, or someone brought it here after his death, no one really knows. But the secrets of his great successes were held within its tri-panel structure. When it opened, a great and bright light covered the room, so bright that it could be seen as a beacon from across the city, though no Jedi would notice or account for this sight. Anakin felt his heart breathe in the impure breath of the Sith. Malgus's dark and humming voice squeezed through the holocron and spoke directly to Anakin, addressing him by name. The ghost of Qui-Gon Jinn was a manifestation of purity. Malgus's dark soul was a ghoul, waiting to be freed from captivity. He latched onto Anakin and spoke deeply into his heart and into his mind. Skywalker was told by Malgus that to have great power is to control what could not be without it. A riddle, but not one that Anakin couldn't decipher. Malgus's words would seep into Anakin's skin, like a poisoned thorn. It dug deeper the more he pulled away from it, but there wasn't much resistance to note of. The instant satisfaction that came with this holocron pulled Anakin deeper. Malgus's holocron highlighted the instant need that Anakin craved. Malgus obviously wasn't present, but the dark side is a corrupting force, and the alchemy used to hide Malgus's deepest secrets was meant to wrap around his victim like a snake. The Dark Lord of the Sith, now thousands of years gone, knew that someone would claim this holocron, and his power would override the ability of the given individual. Skywalker was simply too susceptible to the darkness, and without a true guide and without a protection from the light, he was captured by it. This lesson in darkness wasn't too much, but it pulled Anakin further away from the days of work done by Depa and Shaak Ti. They were highly influential, caring and actually present. Malgus was only influential in his afterlife, but within hours, not days, he was able to pull Anakin. The lessons he gave would do nothing but destroy and ruin everything the 2 Jedi instructors had done for him. But now, with the darkness tugging at Anakin's heart, he was left with one option: how to hide it. There was no secret about Anakin's attachments, but if he could learn the dark side so that he could protect his new instructor, then he would do it. Anakin just remembered how powerless he felt in the moment of Obi-Wan's death. He watched his instructor and someone he thought to be a good friend lose his life. It was a sacrifice rewarded with Dooku's own death, but Anakin wanted the Sith to pay. He wanted to be in control, because if he could have stopped Dooku, then the pain in his heart wouldn't be present. Malgus's holocron offered him the chance to find that peace. Over the following few days, the Jedi would receive yet another external review from the Senate. This time, a part of the commission was newly appointed Senator of the Naboo, Padme Amidala. She was here to represent the Jedi in a positive light. Thanks to the efforts of Qui-Gon and now the dead Obi-Wan, she wanted to protect the Jedi from whatever punishments were levied against them. She knew that the Order wouldn't ever act from a place of spite. Though, because of this external review, this meant that senators would be inside the Jedi Temple to thoroughly conduct their study. Anakin wouldn't get to interact with her, but he would see Padme accompanying members of the High Council. This would force new emotions to surge within his heart, and again, the need to protect someone else. Skywalker struggled eternally because he had to hide his aspirations from his new instructor. Depa Billaba was not foolish because she could sense it, but because no one had considered the holocron stolen from Quell Dorma's tomb, she didn't even think about where this darkness was coming from. Ironically and even tragically, the timing of how Anakin hid his usage of the dark side aligned with the trajectory of his own healing journey. Depa laid out a very direct approach to working through his trauma, emotions, and returning to a more balanced lifestyle. Anakin respected her and trusted her, but as they closed in on the completion of this level of training, Anakin had become more adept in hiding the dark side. The alchemy wasn't exactly the same tools used by Palpatine or Plagueis, because Malgus, despite his incredible power, was not the most Force adept Sith in their history. He was a talented duelist and used the Force respectively, but his lessons, due to his own undercover ops, were what Anakin took knowledge from. The dark side and its possibilities sat underneath his fingertips, and with Depa leading Anakin into lightsaber instruction, it would be his turn to use the skills he picked up on from his evil holocron. Anakin's ability to hide the dark side from Depa led to her believing that he was ready for what he was not. Skywalker had practiced techniques seen in Malgus' holocron, things far beyond his age group of instruction. As per Mace Windu's own word, Depa exceeded him as a duelist, so when even she was caught off guard by Anakin, she knew that something was off. It was an initial strike. They were working on Form 1 practice, and it was going soundly until Anakin spun himself under his saber and cut right near Depa's feet before shoving the weapon forward. It was a swift movement, but it completely blindsided the Jedi Master because they were just practicing. She recoiled immediately, but it made her realize that perhaps she had missed some stirrings within her new apprentice. Though she did not scold Anakin for it, she corrected him. She wished to know where it came from, but not here. They moved back in and continued their training through meditation, not with lightsaber training. This was the difference between an experienced master and an inexperienced master. Skywalker remained proud of himself. As per the words of the holocron, he came to believe that he had impressed his teacher. In doing this, he delved deeper into the dark side. He learned more about concealing his anger and how to maintain the secret power that he was developing. Anakin, in his lessons, was able to see more than his history books ever taught him. He laid eyes on conquest, strength, and true power. Anakin could see Malgus conquer the very temple he sat within, destroy their Jedi Masters, and lay siege to the galaxy. While his initial motivations did not revolve around destruction, Anakin couldn't help but see the glamour in it. There was something so enticing about domination that he felt called to be a part of it. This wasn't even Anakin dreaming about killing his peers, those around him on Coruscant, or even hurting a soul close to him. This was his pursuit of protecting those he cared about, though he couldn't be remiss about what he saw to be amazing. Malgus himself was incredible. Evil and brooding, sure, but remarkably unstoppable and apparently charismatic. There was something within this to take for Anakin, though what he did not understand was what he was letting into his soul. The dark side of the Force was seeping through his body. He was truly engulfed, and Malgus' grip was dragging him below the depths, despite him not understanding that he was drowning the entire time. Outside of Anakin's individual studies with a Jedi and a Sith, both factions were moving to intercept one another. Darth Sidious had to completely course correct because of Dooku's untimely death, and he was not pleased about it. The Jedi were even more on edge because of this little slaughter. Palpatine enjoyed killing those gutless Jedi without remorse, but he knew what it would bring. More worry from the Jedi because someone had just killed 5 of their members. In their eyes, now 2 Sith had been killed, leaving another Sith Lord to reign over the destroyed religion. They'd also lost some notable members in these rancid attacks, and they were actively searching for the Sith. That was the problem Sidious had. They didn't know the reality of the clones or the Sith, but they were hyper aware that the Sith were somewhere around. It made him even more annoyed with Dooku because somehow a child was able to escape his grip, and further worsening things for Sidious, Skywalker was untouchable because of it. There was no route to speaking with him because the Jedi covered him from the outside. Anakin wasn't at all bothered by his seclusion, because Palpatine's interest in him from such a young age was a little weird, but he didn't notice that the Jedi were keeping the two of them separated. This all went to say that Sidious was unable to get what he wanted finished. The timing was off. The CIS Council was far from formation. The Separatist movement as a whole would likely never come, because no one was strong enough to lead that movement without Dooku. It made him a very miserable Sith Lord. The Jedi, inversely, were even more aware of the Sith existence. They went from being mildly worried because of Maul to concerned. The individual Sith they were up against was able to kill 5 Jedi Masters and 3 Temple Guards in one go. That wasn't just anything. This was a powerful adversary. It went as such that Jedi were not permitted to leave the temple in duos anymore. Every group of Jedi had to be 5 or 6 strong. This too included Padawans. The Council specifically was stressed, and some of this concern slipped into Skywalker's training. It really became the perfect concoction for Anakin. He had a caring and even loving motherly figure around, but he wanted to save her from the fate that Kenobi shared in, even though it wasn't an active threat for her because she and Anakin were not leaving the temple. Skywalker's nightmares from the Holocron were infecting his thinking. This also wasn't aided from the fact that he was genuinely traumatized from the experience on Renvar. Anakin, though, continued to experience the dark side in new ways. Some of these powers were heightened with his saber use, others were through proper telekinesis. There were mentions of an ancient weapon that the Sith used called the Dark Reaper, but as Anakin wasn't looking to hurt others, he wasn't concerned with it. He only wanted to kill the Sith. This perhaps was the greatest indication of Anakin's character. Everyone he wanted to protect was within arm's reach. He never truly allowed the dark side to push him away from his pure mindset. But the issue is, he was controlling. As the Jedi would suggest, controlling habits are ones of selfishness, which is a direct path towards darkness. And not for nothing, Anakin's trip down the dark path was kind of proving them right. Depa by this point had made a note of these concerns with instructors inside the council chambers. Some of the members suggested that Anakin be removed to an off-site temple to train, while others believed that this confirmed their early fears of bringing him into their order. Everyone on the council knew how exceptionally talented Depa was as an instructor. She joined the council like her master during her 20s. She was as good as it got inside the order. These worries over Anakin's pull towards darkness just proved to the rest of the council that Kenobi, despite their faith in him, was far too inexperienced to train someone like Anakin. The High Council suggested that Depa continue forward though, inside this temple. There was no reason to completely dismantle her efforts by switching things up on Anakin, further pushing him to be more confrontational, which she wasn't really. But they did suggest that she look into his room. She would take the suggestion but never implement it, fearing that it could cause a rupture in their relationship, something Anakin definitely did not need at the moment in her mind. About a full 2 months into Anakin's training with Depa and the Malgus Holocron, darkness took over his heart. He was grounded for the most part, but what set him down the dark path was his hatred for the Sith. It was weird. Skywalker didn't fully see Malgus as a villain or even as a Sith. He was an incorruptible figure, a master of crusade, not some demagogue destroying out of enjoyment. Anakin had misinterpreted these assaults because Malgus had framed each of them as ones for righteous pursuit. But Anakin's pull towards the dark side was of the hatred for the Sith. Due to Obi-Wan, Coleman, and 8 other Jedi dying recently, the Order became hyper-aware of the Sith. This didn't even mention Qui-Gon's death, which was very big for Anakin. The Order also became hyper-aggressive as a means to finding and destroying their ancient rival religion. This fixation on their mortal enemy forced Anakin to think about that trauma more. So in such a pure hatred, he accidentally changed his lightsaber crystal. It wasn't exactly accidental, but it happened like this. Skywalker was tinkering around with his Jedi weapon. He had learned from Malgus that a heavier weapon makes a deadlier duelist. Malgus prided himself on his 11.3 kilo saber, or in current standard 25-pound weapon. This is what Anakin was trying to do. He had about half of that weight at the current moment, but he pushed for more, making him even speedier and deadlier. As he removed the Kyber crystal from his ignition chamber, he felt a chill roll down his spine. Whether it came from the Holocron or from a memory, he didn't really know. Reality is, it came from both. Anakin remembered Obi-Wan's bone-chilling death, and he imagined an alternative scenario. In this what-if, the one that he created in his head, he landed the shuttle and got out, igniting his crimson saber and marching down the ramp. Dooku challenged him. Their sabers collided across the tundra of Renvar. Anakin felt his power. His saber colored the purity of the icy world in crimson. Dooku's body dropped under the weight of Anakin's power, and he relished in every moment of it. Was Obi-Wan alive? He didn't really know. In the real world, Anakin's hand clenched harder around the crystal. He spoke quietly to himself, telling Obi-Wan, somewhere off in the Force, that all of those who opposed them would die. He would be avenged. Skywalker didn't even notice the shift in his kyber crystal's color. He simply planted it back into the ignition chamber after fueling all of his hatred, all of his rage into the weapon. He had done this exercise so much with opening the crystal and upgrading it that it was like second nature to him. He didn't even need to pay attention when he was tinkering around with it, which is why he didn't see the color change. It wouldn't be until the following day when this color change would be revealed. He and Depa would prepare for another duel, something Skywalker had become increasingly better at. Instead of pushing Anakin towards a more monk-like approach to living as a Jedi, she encouraged his lightsaber practice. It made him happy, which was half the battle for her. Of course, he followed her instruction, but she focused primarily on what he thrived in, without punishing him for falling behind. At this crucial moment in his training, they drew their sabers on a cloud-covered day, and shock filled both of their fates. Depa, realizing the darkness in her student, moved her Jedi weapon to protect herself, unsure of his true desires, because traditionally bleeding a crystal was not an accidental thing. Anakin held the weapon loosely in his hands, accessorizing its crimson glow. He looked to it, then to her. She asked him when he changed that color, and he didn't know. Anakin was just as confused and worried. Instead of trying to punish him, she locked the door and moved away, still maintaining her defensive position, which he didn't necessarily mind. Depa poked around, trying to see where the rage to create this device came from. Anakin had consciously hid the darkness, but he didn't do it out of a desire to hurt anyone near him. She didn't know that, so of course she was going to protect herself first. She asked Anakin what he had been studying. Skywalker toyed around with his saber, actually starting to take an interest in the color it held, before looking to her, having not heard the words she said to him. The crimson glow bounced around his eyes, and he looked like an evil apprentice, a turncoat, a Sith. Anakin stumbled around his words, as she tried to understand the origin of this change, having not sensed this much darkness herself from Anakin. He denied the weapon, just a few seconds too late, and tossed it to the floor. He looked out to the cloudy city, his gaze being met with a lightning strike slamming into the tip of a skyscraper. Anakin spoke honestly, true from his heart, with a hint of exaggeration. He told her about the Holocron, the lessons, the power, the strength. With a madness in his eyes, he turned to his instructor and told her that he wouldn't let something bad happen to her, like it did to Obi-Wan. He was the chosen one. He was destined to bring balance to the Force, or so he was told. He turned away from her to face the window. Anakin believed fully with his heart that he should be able to protect his master if the time may come. He apologized for having not shared that with her earlier, but he didn't want to lose her like he did Obi-Wan. Skywalker promised that his intentions were only honorable. He never wanted to hurt her, only destroy the Sith, destroy the monsters who tried to wrong the people of the galaxy. As these words spoke out emotionally, the door bursted open, as Master Imugundi and a few other Jedi Knights and Temple Guards raised their weapons to stop the apparent Sith. The hysteria of the 10 Jedi deaths had gotten to everyone, and under direct duress, Skywalker ignited his saber after pulling it back into his hand, raising the crimson weapon to his side. The other Jedi looked to each other, preparing themselves for what would become a battle. Depa rushed in trying to stop them, but Anakin was truly seeing red. The darkness that embodied the Holocron was a plague on his body, and it was crushing through him. The first move came from another Jedi, trying to arrest him. Their sabers connected. Skywalker's crimson weapon moved ferociously. While only 15, Depa and Malgus had trained him exceptionally well. The heavy hilt threw the knight off of his feet, and Skywalker whirled around, sending into another Jedi. Master Balaba pushed the Jedi out of the room, telling them that they were only making it worse. All of this was happening because Imogundi had seen the Crimson Saber while walking out the outer edge of the temple. He believed that Deppa was being held hostage, but it wasn't true. Another misconception. Anakin looked to her, and when they locked eyes, the villainous glare she saw moments before was gone. Skywalker thrusted his hand forward and launched a number of Jedi from their feet, creating a red mark on the ground. His master was also thrown. Malgus may have not been the most powerful with the Force, but his technique was incredible. Something that made someone as full of potential as Anakin nearly vicious. Skywalker rushed out of the room and quickly blended into the temple, as he rushed back to his room and grabbed the holocron before breaking out of the structure, using the ventilation shafts. It was a quick escape, one that didn't necessarily need to happen, but one that Anakin believed needed to be done. The Jedi at the site were almost all incapacitated when Anakin used a Force shove. Deppa wasn't knocked out unconscious because she was making sure everyone was alright, but she never caught back up to Anakin, who was now gone, holding on to one of the most deadly weapons known to the Jedi. This was a lesson in what the Council shredded Sifo-Dyas for. They were too literal with believing the vision Yoda had, and now the Chosen One was free in Coruscant with a holocron belonging to one of the greatest Sith warriors in galactic history. Luckily, Anakin's reaction was just that. He was trying to protect himself. The darkness gave him power and strength, but he wasn't acting maliciously towards the other Jedi. Deppa knew this, and despite fearful calls from the knights injured in the Force push, the Council trusted Deppa. They were worried what Skywalker might do with these powers, or if he would be discovered by the true Sith Lord. Anakin thought not of this, as he vanished into the Undercity, using a transport he stole. Sidious, even with his external review ending not in his favor, knew about this little event at the temple. He was excited, because this could be his chance for fixing things. The issue he had with the CIS is that he couldn't be Palpatine openly for them, and Newt Gunray was going into the courts again for his 8th trial. So he didn't have a true supporter on the other side of the aisle, and Jango was no politician. He was working some magic with some former allies at Plagueis, but they were slow to respond and nothing was going forward. The Sith Lord used everything within his budget to find Skywalker, because if anyone would find the Chosen One, it would be him. He'd be damned if it was the Jedi. The Order was quickly working to make arrangements to find Skywalker. Deppa protected his honor, and she told the Council that they had to be vigilant. His power would only grow if he believed the Jedi had betrayed him, which, luckily for the Order, Anakin had trust in Deppa. He worried that he may have hurt her. He wasn't as concerned with the other Jedi, but he didn't want to hurt them either. His main concern was that Deppa might have been hurt. The dagger that was the holocron was laying at his throat as he vanished into the underworld. He used the dark side so that he could protect himself. He was powerful, but that power was too much, sometimes even for him. What he recognized down here alone is that he held little control in the moment. He was almost unable to stop himself. And what was with that red mark on the ground? Where did he conjure that from? This was the dark side manifesting through him. That blindness, that power, could be utilized like a tool for someone knowing how to control it, but Anakin did not have full control or grasp on the Force. He only understood the dichotomy between Deppa and Malgus. These polar opposites did not mesh well when the Sith Lord of the current era put bounty hunters to make moves on Skywalker. Anakin in the underworld, while using his Crimson Saber, cut through pirates, bounty hunters, and other pieces of scum that hoped to earn a huge cash sum from their unknown buyer. The Jedi weren't aware that Anakin was in instant danger. They just knew that the Sith might try and chase him down. Skywalker in a few days would rack up kills, growing in his power, but also pushing him further into the darkness. He was engulfed in the raw strength it gave him. Anakin's first few defensive kills were how Deppa trained him, how Obi-Wan instructed him. They were out of self-preservation, not slaughter. But as he grew more tired, thus becoming more irritated, these kills were no longer just deflecting blaster shots. These were a fury of strikes, dismemberments, and raw kills. Anakin felt himself sink deeper into the darkness, and he trusted the holocron, which he found consolation in. Similar to the Sith Lord of the current era, Anakin started to train himself to stay awake for longer periods of time. The plague of darkness was coursing through him, making every waking moment a paranoia-stricken fever dream. Due to the lack of sleep alone, he was delving further into despair, and the schizophrenia that engulfed the sleepless embodied every moment. Shadows on the walls tormented him by dancing over what he thought could be his next grave. People laughing a little ways away sounded like Helions cackling about the torture they would bring to him when his eyes fell shut. This is what Palpatine wanted, even though he didn't know how bad it truly got for Anakin. The young Jedi continued to poke around Malgus' Holocron. He opened it up under heavy blankets he borrowed from homeless people so that he could learn more. The might belonged to him. The deeper he went, the more in touch with the dark side he became. His eyes slowly donned a color belonging to a Sith. He could feel its radiance, and he relished in every moment of it. Then came the silence. While one might assume that his paranoia would slip away without a hint of battle, it amplified everything. He started to doubt memories or experiences. Did he really slaughter that man? Did he dismember that crew? Did he gut that woman? These weren't real, were they? Anakin was unsure, but the Holocron told him to keep going further. The trail of death that followed Skywalker and then eventually stopped led the Jedi and the Sith towards him. Now, it became unknown who would find who first because the Jedi knew someone was sending everyone after Anakin. Sidious almost stumbled into a crew of Windu, Mundi, and Plo, but he did not engage. Not out of fear, but out of a desire to find Skywalker first and save himself the time and energy just in case. The Jedi were actively hunting for Anakin, and they realized that they should have removed him from any of this duress the moment he returned to Coruscant. Master Halsey at Deveron would have been a great help. He and Depa would have fixed this, but the sad reality is, no one was truly to blame. Skywalker continued to saunter around, eating what little he could and feeding off the Force itself instead. He learned to use electricity and Force drain at their minimal capacities. The true power that Malgus gifted him was technique. Skywalker used these on his opponents, growing stronger and stronger by the day when more of them showed up after the silence. This was fed by his constant need for survival and the rate at which he killed. Surprisingly, the Jedi understood what this was. Every individual they found in their trail to Anakin led them to believe that he was being hunted. While the kills were more gruesome in nature, they were also proof that Skywalker was a danger to everyone around him, including himself. It would take 2 full weeks for anyone to make contact with him. It would be following his 16th birthday, and he wasn't alone. Anakin had been found by Sidious first, but they were not being friendly. The Sith Lord helped to coax Anakin into a friendship, because they needed each other. But all Anakin could see was Obi-Wan's life fading from his eyes, and so when they met, a duel started almost instantly. Sidious and Skywalker clashing away with their crimson sabers, but Palpatine was not trying to kill his future apprentice. He was protecting himself. Their weapons slashed across the alleyway. Palpatine tried to help Anakin see that he was losing himself. He was confused, and there was no reason to be. Sidious could help him and teach him the ways of the dark side. Skywalker was having enough. He was fighting for his old master and his new one. When the Jedi found the two of them, Anakin was spinning around with his heavy lightsaber, bashing away at the Sith Lord. The Jedi saw the two duelists before either of them sensed or saw them. Palpatine was genuinely distracted, because despite him taking it easy on Anakin, he did need to protect himself. Mace Windu, Yoda, Depa Billaba, and Plo Koon looked to each other and split up. Mace, Depa, and Plo leapt into the air to move around the alleyway. Mace would approach from behind, with Depa and Plo coming down from either side. Sidious wasn't privy to their approach until he sensed a swift change in the Force. Skywalker spun around, batting his saber at Sidious, and stepping back before blasting electricity at the Sith Lord. Palpatine formed his sabers into an X to protect himself. Anakin, instead of being blasted back, pulled away. He instead tried to use this as a distraction, but as soon as he swung, Sidious sidestepped him and cut him across the back of his shoulder. Anakin wheezed in pain, but pain is power, and it filled his body. As soon as his body touched the ground, lightsabers ignited around them. From above them were two blue, Plo and Depa. On either side were Emerald and Amethyst. Sidious looked around, and Skywalker grinned deviously. He scrambled around as Yoda tried to get him to stop, but Anakin could see the advantage. He saw Depa and knew that he would be safe. He trusted her, but he'd also fight for her. Skywalker thrusted his saber at Sidious, who sidestepped him and missed a deadly blow, due to Anakin parrying this time. Yoda launched himself in. He and Palpatine collided their blades. The Sith Lord stepped back, dropping one weapon from his hand and catching it as he cut down at Yoda. Though he was forced to defend himself when Windu drove his saber forward. The two of them quickly engaged, and Sidious leapt over them, shooting electricity at the Jedi. But Yoda protected Windu and Skywalker. As Palpatine landed, he was attacked by Plo, and he parried before defending another strike from Dappa. Anakin rushed in. The other Jedi Masters continued striking away at Sidious, but he was unstoppable. His sabers sizzled in anticipation of their first kill in months. Skywalker rushed the Sith Lord, taking another lesson from Malgus, though this was a failure on Alderaan. Instead of using his weapon, Anakin picked Palpatine off the ground and forced him from his position, like Jace Malcolm all those years ago. Without a grenade though, Anakin had another weapon, firing electricity into Sidious's eyes. The Sith Lord fell backward, but was able-bodied enough to stop Anakin from killing him with a single strike. The four Jedi moved to intercept the duel, but Anakin bared down with all of his strength and shoved Palpatine's own weapons through his body, killing him with an uneasy and echoing sizzle. Anakin felt it. The darkness, the power, it belonged to him. And all in one instant as he looked down at Palpatine's dead body, he collapsed. Dappa would hold him up by his uninjured arm, with Mace joining her on the other side, where his injury was. Yoda nodded to Plo, as the Grand Master checked on Sidious's body. The Keldor Jedi Master walked up and placed his hand gently on Anakin's back, and everything went dark. When the light returned to his eyes, he was inside of a medical bay. He wasn't injured, it was just a more open landscape. The Jedi had taken Malgus' holocron to examine what Anakin may have learned. In the underworld, Plo healed Anakin's wound, and they knocked him out, knowing how tired he must have been. By this point, the events regarding Palpatine's death had passed by. Skywalker was deathly unhealthy. Days of starvation and dehydration, not to mention almost a full week without sleep, pushed him so far into the dark side that he became a beacon of its power. He was okay right now. He had been fed and hydrated while unconscious, catching up on some much-needed sleep. Dappa and Yoda were by his side when he woke up. They would tell him that it was okay and that he hadn't done anything wrong technically. The Jedi had taken responsibility for their forgetfulness. There were a few other searches for the holocron after Obi-Wan's death, but they had never thought to ask Anakin about it, assuming he would have given it to them when he came back. Yoda did want to know why he didn't tell anyone, but that was a question and answer that would come later. For now, they wanted the 16-year-old Jedi to know that they were wishing him a happy birthday, and for it, they had done two things. They brought his mother to Coruscant to see him, and they wanted to congratulate him on fulfilling the prophecy. There was much more political and boring work to do, but that wasn't of its concern. Anakin and Shmi would reunite, and they'd be able to spend the day together. It may have not been traditional Jedi customs, but from their eyes, they had seen Anakin go further into the dark side than perhaps any other Jedi in their history, and he still returned unscathed. They had examined him following the incident, and the yellow eyes he donned in their fight had dissipated. The hate that turned his crystal red was a bad memory, a terrible one that caused him more anguish than simple meditation could heal. They, especially thanks to Dappa, trusted Anakin. She covered his back after everything, and Mace knew that her instincts would be the right ones to follow. Allowed visits with his mother over the years would eventually be what saved Shmi from the Tusken Raiders. Just a stroke of luck, if you will. Anakin would have a long road to walk back from, but Master Windu would oversee an entire leg of Anakin's training. And they actually let him keep the red crystal. Why, you might ask? Because he had proven himself. Anakin's crystal, while being formed in the traditional path of the Sith, wasn't a harvester of death. As proven by Anakin's own essence, the crystal nor the holocron had fully corrupted him. He had absolutely screwed up his understanding of Malgus, and he had a very jarred perspective of the Force, but somehow, childhood innocence saved him from himself. The darkness inside these two instruments could have corrupted many more, but all of Anakin's pain came from the Sith. The Jedi paired him up with Dappa and Shakti, and they took care of him. Skywalker couldn't loathe them for that. He was upset about his mother, but even then, as far as he knew, they had freed his mother from slavery. This was also something Shmi chose to never correct, not because the Jedi told her not to, but because she was content if he was content. There'd be no Great War, but the Crimson lightsaber-wielding Chosen One would be the unsung hero of the future.
The clones would be dealt with as humanely as possible, used for fighting in the Outer Rim, and the Senate would slowly lose its grip. A new chancellor would rise following a vote of no confidence in Masameda. It wouldn't solve everything, but it would grant the Jedi more independence, which would allow them to work freely as saviors of the galaxy. This would be something Anakin took great pride in. His order, his Jedi family, would bring hope to the galaxy. He would never see its completion, but he'd be the anchor for the future generations of Jedi. A statue of him would be erected outside the temple, just as a constant reminder of what a Jedi could and should aspire to be. And that, my friends, is our twisted story. And special thanks to the patrons for supporting the channel, and also, did you guys like that editing style? So, fun fact, I've tried this before and I got flagged before. I don't know if I got flagged on that specific video or not, so I'm trying it again. If you guys like it, let me know. Yeah, I'm willing to go hard in the paint for the editing side of things, to match the grandeur of the stories, but if it doesn't happen again, it's because this video got flagged. So I'm just putting it out there. I would like to try this style again. It looks good, it's fun, it adds a lot more dynamic to the video, in my opinion, but if you guys like it, then that's all that really matters to me. So let me know about that. Otherwise, let's talk about the story. So this is a weird twist. I actually really wanted to have Anakin with the red crystal, and I wanted the feeling around him to be kind of ambiguous. I wanted Anakin's struggles with the dark side to be very real, but him also kind of having this weird split. He's getting the power lessons from the Sith, but he's also healing his emotional self with the Jedi. And I think the main reason he never falls or falters towards true darkness is because he hates the Sith. Now, I really thought it'd be interesting to have Anakin not recognize Malgus as a true Sith. Kind of like this manipulation of what he really is. And it's kind of like a weird irony there, but Anakin absolutely loathes the Sith. That is why he doesn't turn fully to the dark side. He hates the Sith more than anything. And he wants to protect his new master because he kind of sees her like a mother figure, almost like he saw Obi-Wan like a father figure. So he's trying to protect his instructor, and therefore he cares more about the Jedi. And so it's that simple little twist right there that makes him really a more vibrant and openly dark-sided version of what Mace Windu is. So I hope you all enjoyed the story. I love you all, spread the love, and always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.